Now, as modern as all these tanks look, the concept of armoured cavalry is actually pretty ancient. In fact, a lot of the older regiments have just swapped their horses for tanks. We paid a visit to the Cavalry Tank Museum at the centre to take a look back at where it all began. Ever since the first ancient soldier mounted a horse, the advantages of mounted cavalry were immediately apparent. Faster than the foot soldier, the mounted trooper, whether on horseback or chariot, had the advantage of speed, maneuverability, the element of surprise, and a weapons platform that allowed him to make use of long-range arms, be it the arrow, the spear, or the lance. With the advent of the machine gun and trench warfare of World War I, conventional infantry was bogged down and horse-mounted cavalry was too vulnerable to the bullet. Enter the tank. First fielded by the British Army in the muddy fields of the Somme in France, this weapon, designed in secrecy, was called the tank, as in the water tank, to hide its true identity. The name stuck.
The Battle of Somme, where 1916, where the first time it was employed. Once it was employed, it was realized that here is a piece of equipment which carries a punch. It gives protection to the people who are being carried within. So that's how the whole advent of this whole concept came.
From the British Mark V to the Rolls-Royce armoured car, war had become mechanized, and suddenly armies were on the move again.
As you provided a mechanical means of movement, you also realize it gives you a lot of flexibility. You could switch from one place to the other in very little time. And as this equipment was able to switch across, it provided the flexibility, and therefore it was able to appear at places where it was least expected.
World War II saw the tank coming into its own as an instrument of war, used in huge numbers in all theatres. The grassy fields of France and Belgium, the rolling steppe of the Soviet Union, right to the steaming jungles of New Guinea. Overall design too reflected the modernization of the tank, the rotating turret, the heavy armour, and the massive main gun.
Right from prehistoric days, right from the caveman, you've had the race between the sword and the shield. Somebody brings out a better sword, you make a heavier shield.
Tanks have had a long and proud history in the Indian Army since before independence, and as the British Army left India, the mainstay of the Indian Army was mostly from the World War II Allied arsenal. The M4 Sherman, the Churchill, the Grant, and the Stuart tank. Post-war designed battle tanks such as the Soviet-designed T-55 and the British-derived Centurion, or Vijayanta MBT, saw an active and decisive role in the conflicts of 1965 and 1971.
When I joined my regiment, we had the Vijayanta tanks, indigenous, but based on the Vickers tank of the... and if you're aware that the first time they were employed in battle was first time they came into service was in 1966, and they were employed in the army in the 71 war also, the Vijayanta tank. But those were adaptations of a British tank.
Global defense strategists claim that the day and age of massive tank-on-tank battles on the scale of the Battle of Kursk, or those seen in the western sectors during the War of 1965, might have passed. But as the methods of conflict changes, so does the tank.
During night. Today you have all kinds of night vision devices. You have infrared which can pick you up. You have image intensifiers that can pick you up. So the developments have been in the field of how to defeat that. So you had things like the anti-IR paint which came up, so that you couldn't be picked up that easily. I think gradually we have to look at biofuels for such equipment, because after all, a medium tank today, the normal state is 6 liters to a kilometer, right? Which, as the fuel situation all over the world is, and it's not a renewable energy resource. So you will firstly have to start looking at renewable energy resources, which can be used in such equipment also. Fuel which is required to even generate that kind of power and to move this equipment is a very costly affair, and it's not that easily going to be available in the years to come. So definitely the technology is going to shift towards that.
And India is prepared for the future. Say hello to the Arjun MBT. Named after the legendary warrior Arjun from the Mahabharata, this tank was designed and developed indigenously by the DRDO. Which brings us to the big daddy of the Indian Armoured Corps, the Arjun MBT or main battle tank. Now in a world where the T-72 and the T-90 are pretty huge themselves, they're still considered medium. This behind me right here weighs in at a behemothly 58 tons. It doesn't get any meaner than this.
It is considered to be amongst the world's best tanks, and it has been developed indigenously and produced indigenously by India.
The Arjun MBT is the heaviest and largest tank in the Indian Army, more than 10 meters long, almost 4 meters wide. Everything about the Arjun is big.
This tank weighs approximately 58 tons, which classifies it as a heavy tank. Also, this tank therefore needs a 1400 bhp powered engine, which is a turbocharged engine, and this enables this tank to have tremendous agility and maneuverability in the battle. If you're in desert terrain, this tank can go at about 50 kilometers at best. If you're on a road, 70 quite easily. And on normal cross country, if you're talking about terrain as such as this, yeah, again 40 to 50 odd kilometers, that's pretty fast.
From its 120mm main gun designed to fire a wide variety of ordnance, the 12.7 anti-aircraft gun and the 7.62 coaxial machine gun, to the turbocharged flex fuel engine putting out approximately 1,400 brake horsepower.
It gives this tank the capability to negotiate any obstacle in the battle. As far as the armor protection of this tank is concerned, the Arjun is protected with the indigenously developed and produced Kanchan armor, which provides all-round protection against most types of projectiles and ammunition which are there and in vogue today. This tank is impenetrable. It has got tremendous armor protection. It is extremely mobile. It has a very, very powerful engine. And the gunnery aspects, it is considered to be one of the finest. It has the best, amongst the best sighting systems in the world. So, well and truly, it is the king of the battlefield.
But the machine, they say, is only as good as the men that operate them. What is it that makes a tanker unique in the fraternity of fighting men?
We believe that you give a chap a mission or an objective to be achieved and leave the how and when and the way to do it to him. To do such a thing, to be able to achieve these kind of objectives in the absence of orders, they need to be trained right from day one to be independent thinking, and therefore it must become a part and parcel of their lifestyle. You can't suddenly bring in these factors when on the battlefield. So even in his day-to-day work and life, he has to be able to function without orders. And therefore this feeling of being more independent, as long as you're functioning within the framework of an objective or a guideline that is given to you. We want our soldiers, our tank commanders, our officers to be able to function totally in an environment where there's a vacuum of orders and yet achieve the objectives.
And that was our show for this week. We've had an absolutely awesome time making it. We hope you've had a great time watching. Remember, you can catch this entire fantastic episode online at timesnow.tv, or you could join the conversation at facebook.com/timesdrive. Till next week then, in the words of the Armoured Corps, Klotsen nicht kleckern.